Hey everybody, I'm Eddie Starr, and this is the College of Rock and Roll Knowledge. Class is now in session. This is where the music and culture that shaped a generation live on, and my own path to the world of rock and roll. Music has always been a big part of my life. Growing up, my parents always had the radio on. They were singing, they were talking about artists they enjoyed. My dad was really into his parents' generation of music. So he liked Perry Como, Frank Sinatra, Pat Boone, where my mom was really contemporary in her taste. She liked the music of her generation. She liked the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, Ike and Tina Turner, Sam Cooke, a lot of the Phil Spector stuff. And they were creative as individuals. My dad had played guitar when he was young. I found a picture of him from 1964 with a Chuck Berry style guitar. And on the back of the photograph, he had written, "You thought I could never do it, but here's proof." And I don't know if he was in bands. He never shared with me whether, he never told me that he played guitar. I found that out through relatives and, of course, the picture. And my mom, she sang, she was into the arts, she enjoyed theater, literature, Shakespeare. In fact, when we were really small children, she used to scare us and do the sleepwalking scene, Lady Macbeth's sleepwalking scene. And her final words to me when I would go out as a teenager were, "To thine own self be true." Those were the words that she said to me before I left the house. When I was 4, my dad packed up the house into a U-Haul bobtail truck, and he rented a trailer hitch, which he attached our family car to the back of this bobtail truck. All of us were scrunched in the cab, and we moved from London, Ontario, Canada, to Southern California. And along the way, the radio was on, of course. And The Fifth Dimension, The Age of Aquarius, Let the Sunshine In, the Mamas and Papas, California Dreamin', which my dad was doing because he did not like the winters. So California, here we come. And along the way, he would sing the songs, whether it be The Age of Aquarius or California Dreamin', sometimes, or other songs. He would change the lyrics and insert our name into the lyrics or try and get us to sing along. And, what do you do on a very long trip when you're scrunched into the cab of a bobtail truck? Once we were settled in Southern California, my parents listened to KRLA, which was an oldies station that played music from the 50s and the 60s. So, it was the Shangri-La's Leader of the Pack. It was Darlene Love and the Crystals, He's a Rebel. It was Ricky Nelson, Elvis, Jailhouse Rock, a lot of the early Rolling Stones, the Beatles. And I have vivid memories of sitting at the kitchen table and my mom would have the radio on, or sometimes my dad would be he was a business owner, so he would be doing some of his paperwork or something like that at the table, and sometimes they would tell us stories about the song or a memory they had of what they were doing or the first time they heard the song. And all of this had a big impact on me. It brought to mind the themes of these songs, brought to mind what author Nick Cohn in his great book, Rock Dreams, called the teen dreams. Songs like He's a Rebel or Leader of the Pack. And so a lot of these ideas sort of got me into the vibe of what I thought was cool, and sort of really set the template for my own choice in music, which happened when I was probably about 7 or 8, and my aunt bought me this white transistor radio, very little tiny radio, and I would go to bed, pull the covers over my head, put the radio under the pillow so no one could hear, put it on low, and I would put on 93 KHJ. And I very distinctly remember hearing Robin Zander from Cheap Trick's voice. I want you to want me. And that was the first song I picked, I Want You to Want Me by Cheap Trick. That was my song. And of course, they had so many great songs, including Surrender and that album from Japan, that Japanese live import, really changed things in terms of music. But that was my choice. And then when I went to school, at recess, the teacher would allow kids to take the turntable out of the classroom and outside, and kids would bring records and play them. So you had one side of the playground, which was all Tiger Beat, Sean Cassidy, Dadu Run Run, which is interesting because he covered that song from Darlene Love, but that was also the music that my parents were playing as well. So it sort of was like the past and the present being tied together. And then, of course, you had Andy Gibb with Shadow Dancing, and people were crazy for that. But then on the other side of the playground, there was another turntable, and kids were bringing records by Blondie and the Ramones. And I distinctly remember Hearts of Glass being played, and Rock and Roll High School over those course of those years, my elementary school years. Of course, Pink Floyd, The Wall was huge. I was in 6th grade at the time. And my parents didn't like some of the lyrics of those songs, so it was sort of funny. Another story was that everyone had heard of the Sex Pistols, but no one had heard the Sex Pistols because we were all young kids. And I do remember mentioning that once at home. My parents really freaked out because I guess they, had read about what I was talking about. I was like, 8 years old. I didn't know anything. And it's funny because I wouldn't hear Nevermind the Bollocks until like 1982. Finally heard the Sex Pistols after they were long gone. And it's sort of funny in my musical journey because a lot of the bands that really influenced me and really I loved, like the Sex Pistols or Generation X, I didn't find out about them until much later when I was already in junior high school, after sort of the glow of that time period had ended. And at that time, everyone was in new wave territory, of course. So anyway, I think that wraps up this week's class. Thank you for listening, and please subscribe. I also will be posting a playlist of the music I mentioned, and of course Nick Cohen's great book, Rock Dreams, in the description below. So subscribe on YouTube and Spotify, and I'll see you next week. What you want me to be, the darkness will turn to light. I'm your dirty secret tonight. Dream or not and take a look inside. Eddie Starr's College of Rock and Roll Knowledge is a production of Ton Up Incorporated. Copyright 2020 Ton Up Incorporated.